In August of 2025, a very promising new indie game came out from an unknown studio that raised $17 million in funding. It was immediately panned, the servers were shut down 4 months after release, and now it sits in Steam libraries, a shell of its former vision. This is their story. If you were anything like me, a man in his mid-30s masquerading as a cat girl on the internet because he thinks it's funny, there's a chance that your algorithm showed you ads for this game about a year ago. The ones I saw all had the same text. "We made a game that blended the best of Hades, Sailor Moon, and Club Penguin. Starlight Revolver, a magical girl anime-inspired co-op action RPG releasing soon. Wishlist now on Steam." Sounds dope, right? I like Hades, I like cute art styles. I never played Club Penguin, but I know people that did were crazy about it. You know what? I'm not usually one to fall for ads. I try my best to just ignore them, but I will wishlist this now on Steam. Thank you, Reddit, for showing me an ad that actually resonated for once. Time went on, I kept seeing ads for this game relentlessly, and eventually the email showed up saying, "Hey, you know that ad game that you fell for? It's out now and it's also on sale." Upon clicking on the Steam page, I noticed a little something something that's usually a big red flag. Mixed reviews. But hey, I'm one that likes to form his own opinions, so I gave it a buy. I played this game for exactly 91 minutes and thought to myself, oh no, I don't think this is a finished game. But that's okay, I've spent countless hours playing early access titles, I know how that goes. But really, I'm not having much fun with this, at least not in its current state. So I formed the basis of my opinion, and I decided, hey, maybe it's time to read some of those reviews and see if others are having the same complaints that I have. Oh no. Oh god, okay. Alright, I'm gonna be real here. This is my third time trying to write this script. The idea of making a video about this game has been banging around in my head since I uploaded the first video to this channel. The game came out right around the same time as I started this channel, and as I dove deeper down the rabbit hole, I just kept thinking, this is such a fascinating case study in how not to handle an indie game release, at all. There was such a small player base, yet the amount of drama that I was finding was incredible. And it all seems to stem from a single, now locked post in the Steam forums that I kept seeing mentioned in all of the bad reviews. This game is being developed in an echo chamber. Listen, this post is a novel. I'm not going to sit here and read the whole thing to you guys, but there are some very interesting points, and if this video piques your interest at all, I would highly recommend giving it a read. It's almost become ubiquitous with the game itself. But first, before we dive into all that, let's take a look at the developer behind this game, Pato Labs. Now listen, I want to preface this in two ways. One, my intention with this video is not to kick them while they're down. I don't wish for any indie game to fail, but I also see a lot of cracks in how this one was handled. I'm not flaming Pato or their products, I'm just providing insight on something that I found interesting, and trying to keep it as unbiased as I can. And two, take all of this with a slight grain of salt, man, because trying to find an easily digestible history of the company is proving a lot harder than I expected. Their own website doesn't really tell much of a story, just a little feel-good, "we are gamers making anime games" blurb, and some buzzword-friendly non-descriptions that, I have a sneaking suspicion weren't written by a human. From what I've been able to piece together, Pato Labs was founded in 2021 by this dude, Daniel Zhou, and they had a vision to create anime-inspired RPGs that were heavily focused on building multiplayer communities. I've seen it quoted and mentioned quite a few times that they were specifically trying to capture anime enthusiasts, and they were supplying a product to meet the demands for, and I quote here, interactive anime entertainment. When did Genshin release and rake in $800 million in revenue just in the remaining 3 months of that year? September of 2020? A few months before Pato was formed? Yeah, no, I'm sure that had nothing to do with this fun new idea of producing interactive anime entertainment. So March of 2021, they received their first round of funding, which was $800,000 from a handful of venture capital firms. Exactly 1 month later, another round of funding, this time bringing in $2 million from a whole lot of venture capital firms. And finally, in September of 2023, they had their Series A and raised $15 million. Now, this seems like a lot of money for some no-name studio to raise, yes. And a lot of people have been pointing fingers at them, accusing them of developing crypto bro or AI-generated bullshit that's disguised as games, and that's what explains the massive funding. I saw nothing about this in my research. It does seem odd that a new company was able to secure that much funding almost immediately, but again, like MiHoYo had just cleared 800 million in 3 months making interactive anime entertainment. 15 million is small potatoes compared to that. It doesn't really seem as unlikely when you think about it that way. Like, if I was an investor with massive money to burn and I saw potential in this company as becoming the US equivalent of MiHoYo, like, yeah, man, I would probably take that gamble. But that's just my 2 cents on that. I mean, if you can find something about them, like creating crypto games or something, yeah, throw it in the comments because I couldn't. So cool. Pato now has money and they need a team. They ended up hiring on multiple industry veterans coming from companies like Capcom and Riot Games, and they're now working on their flagship product, a game called Halcyon Zero. This will eventually turn into Starlight Revolver, and surprisingly the website is still active for the old game. The gameplay looks very similar, but the art direction is a bit, oh man, generic? Maybe AI generated? It's certainly not high enough quality to stand out. Bam, Ashley Pye Hetrick, a phenomenal artist with a style straight out of Studio Trigger. I don't know the story of how they got involved with this project, I would assume with a resume and a job interview, but it's a damn good pairing. The art now does all of the heavy lifting. Like, this art direction is what they needed completely. Like, the art is what piqued my interest from the ads I kept seeing repeatedly, more so than the Hades meets Club Penguin verbiage. So alright dude, like, things are looking great for this game. The company has hella funding, they have a solid team working on what sounds like, a dream project for a lot of people, and it's getting to a point where they can start showing it off. The ads start rolling out, hype starts building, they get a booth at Anime NYC and do a collab with Iron Mouse and Seadog VA, and man, I'm trying really hard not to throw shade here, but for the game that raised 17 million bucks, this booth feels a little underwhelming, right? Like what is this? Some folding card tables and bed sheets from Walmart? I'm sure this won't be a sign for things to come. June 8th through the 18th of 2025, there's a Steam Next Fest demo that went live. People finally had the chance to try this game that's been heavily advertised. Did it go well? Poorly? I honestly don't know. I can't find anything about it. I found one single Reddit post of an Attack on Titan edit someone made that was positive, with one positive comment underneath being like, only 1 or 2 more months to wait, it's gonna be worth it. So hey, at least these 2 people liked what they saw from the demo. I didn't find any negative feedback about it, so things are looking good, I guess. They mentioned that the game has been wishlisted over 100,000 times, so there's definitely some hype and traction around the release. That said, the game enters early access August 27th, and that's where I come in. I'm a day 1 downloader, yo. I got the email while I was on the elliptical at the gym, I bought it on my phone and downloaded it when I got home to give it a shot. So here we are, full circle, back to the intro part where I said, nah, this is unfinished, and then I found the reviews and the large echo chamber thread. I read through this whole novel that night. I was obsessed with it. I returned to it the next day at work, reading the new updates that were added. I was more invested in this thread than I was in the actual game that it was talking about. And clearly, based on a lot of the negative reviews mentioning this thread, I wasn't alone in this. I'm going to try to parse this giant thread into a more easily digestible version because after all the updates, it's all over the place and it's kind of hard to read. But again, if you find this as interesting as I do, I definitely recommend diving into it yourself. So to start, the count here makes some excellent and fair points that are genuinely good feedback for a new game that's in early access. The controls are stiff, which for roguelikes that demand precision, it's not great. Using skills immobilizes you, also not great for fast-paced roguelikes. There's no feedback for when you are hit or when you're hitting enemies. You can't rebind your controls, there's zero guidance on where to go in the overworld hub. UI elements sometimes gray out and won't work unless you close and relaunch the game. If your PC name is not in English, the game literally won't boot and it'll just throw errors. Just to name a few. The problem here isn't that the game has errors. That's to be expected from an early access game that just dropped. Perhaps a list this large goes a bit beyond small indie dev quirks and falls more into mismanaged development team with unrealistic timeline expectations territory, but that's not what has the count upset. The problem he states is that the small indie dev and the small but mighty community that they've now cultivated around this game, they're pretending that these issues don't exist, or at the very least they're just ignoring this one very large glaring feedback thread that is staring them in the face. Actually, it goes beyond just ignoring it. I wasn't in the Discord, so I'm taking the count's word at face value here, but they mentioned that the moderators were specifically telling people to ignore this big thread that was garnering a lot of attention. You can also look at the other threads in the Steam forums and see that most are dead, and the ones that do have responses from the developers are the easy-to-answer questions. Why doesn't this game support Chinese? Oh, don't worry, it's on the way. Why doesn't this game have Steam Deck support? Oh, we are considering it. Yet this large mega thread, a huge, at times incoherent, but realistic list of grievances that players are having? Not a peep. There's an old adage that I've heard a lot since the early days of the internet. Don't feed the trolls. I think that's what the devs that were seemingly active in the Steam threads were thinking, and I don't necessarily blame them. As the thread went on and the updates upon updates kept rolling in, it became increasingly more hostile, took on a bit of a speculation, conspiracy theory angle with blockchain and AI stuff that, I intentionally omitted here because I don't think it adds value to the discussion, and it just got too long to reasonably respond to. No response from the devs was going to satiate the pitchfork wielders anyway, it would only fuel the flames. But when it gets to the point that every new review for this game is referencing this big thread, and all of the comments in the thread are your potential customers taking time to say, ew, I was excited for this game, but after reading this, oh, never mind, it's no longer just a troll that you can ignore. When the big bad angry thread becomes a better source of information than the developers themselves, you no longer control the conversation around your game, and the silence starts to give credence to the claims around it. So August 29th, 2 days after the launch to Early Access, Dan did make a written statement. He doesn't name drop the echo chamber post specifically, but it is absolutely what brought this on. When certain posts first came out, I was advised by my friend who works in crisis PR not to directly engage, but at this point I feel strongly that I need to authoritatively address all of the points being made. The discussion has now extended beyond my own personal background and the studio's fundraising history to directly affecting our game, Starlight Volver, and the incredible team that has poured their hearts into this project for the past 4 years. He goes on to explain himself personally. He does have a background in crypto, but he clears the air about how Pato is not making crypto games, blockchain games, and that they are not using any generative AI for art or code. He talks about the studio's funding, his history in angel investing, and in so many words, apologizes for trying to come off as a solo dev in some earlier Reddit post. We are humbled by the passion of our community. Feedback, positive or negative, pushes us to keep improving. Thank you all for being a part of this journey with us. Honestly, it's a classy response. In my opinion, it answers questions about a lot of the AI blockchain speculation stuff in the thread that was really blowing up. And it looks like pretty standard damage control. Nothing in here is offensive to me, but it's why I mentioned that no response would actually help and would instead just fuel the flames. When I just read through this again, my first thought was, nice, hey, thanks for clearing up the personal stuff, that's cool. But you did not address the main gripe at all, the whole idea behind the mega thread in the first place. The game is being developed in an echo chamber. He does not mention anything about the glaring issues the game has. He does not mention anything about the technical issues. Nothing about the fact that people are pissed off that this is a $25 game with a cash shop. He only addresses the personal issues about himself and his company. And again, I don't blame him. The thread became a troll hive when it started focusing less on the game itself and more on the CEO personally and his team. He needed to address that first and foremost to clear the air. I agree. You can hate crypto bros all day long, that's your prerogative, but it has nothing to do with why this game isn't fun. To me, the game just wasn't fun because it felt unfinished. The game felt unfinished because of the technical issues discussed in that thread that were not mentioned. The game was being developed in an echo chamber because those issues were being ignored, or at times they were being defended by the small but committed community instead of being criticized. Starlight Volver hit its max concurrent players on launch day. 499 players was, and still is, the peak concurrent player count that the game ever had. A week later, it was at 143. While I am typing this script up, on this day, May 7th, 2026, there is one person playing this game. There was a community sticking through it after launch day, yes, but it was small. And small doesn't pay for servers. No sales doesn't pay back investors or pay your team. On September 11th, they dropped the price of the game from $19.99 to $12.99. They offered a partial refund to people that had paid the original price. And finally, on December 22nd, just 4 months after launch, the game was taken offline. What was to be a massive multiplayer online experience is now a single-player game with very little content, little incentive to play it, and no plans for any future updates. This is a crazy story, dude. Like, it's like I said at the beginning, I was rooting for this game. I was one of those 499 players on launch day that gave this game a shot. And it's a shame too, because the concept wasn't bad, but the game was just absolutely not finished enough to even be considered an early access title. This was a minimum viable product being sold for more than other games like Silksong, dude. I never want to see indie game studios fail, but this shit, like, man, it was just handled so poorly. It just goes to show, you can have everything perfect on paper. You can have all of the building blocks needed to make something special. Phenomenal art direction, a team of veterans, and $17 million at your disposal. But if you don't stack these pieces correctly, if you don't manage the project correctly, the whole thing can and will crumble around you. So that's the story of Pato Labs and Starlight Revolver. What do you think? Did you play it? Will you give it a play now that it's a single-player experience? Did the game fail due to mismanagement, or was it actually just this one crazy Steam thread that put the nail in the coffin? Did this one guy single-handedly kill Pato Labs? That's crazy. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you in the next one.